Hello. Welcome to the first edition of the DA Dashboard podcast. I'm Adam Jones, the Communications Director for the Tulsa County District Attorney's Office, and I am with the District Attorney, Steve Kunzweiler, for our very first podcast episode. And we want to give a big thank you to our partners at Tulsa County for allowing us their space and their infrastructure to allow us to be able to produce this. Steve, thank you so much for doing this.
I think the proper introduction is this is my boss, Steve Kunzweiler, and I'm going to be interviewing
That's
him.
fair.
So, yeah, there we go.
That's fair.
Yep, fair.
Well, I've always said that the most powerful thing is a story, and that the best kind of story is an origin story. Mm-hmm. So this is our first episode. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us your origin story and why you became a prosecutor.
Okay. So I grew up outside St. Louis, a little suburban town called O'Fallon, Missouri. I've got three brothers. I'm number three out of the four. My mom and dad are Depression-era parents. They grew up in the late 20s, early 30s, went through World War II. So their framework was very much focused on, doing whatever you could to sustain yourself or survive, and that kind of work ethic was imprinted on me and my three brothers. Blue collar upbringing. Mom and dad did not go to college. My mom never even went to high school. She graduated 8th grade. Dad went to high school, graduated, or went to like a trade school for a year. They met outside St. Louis, got married, had the four boys, to include me, and they were always go to college, go to college, go to college. So brother number two, who is a retired Air Force pilot, he and I roughly went to college about the same time. I went to the University of Missouri. I got my undergraduate degree in agriculture journalism, but all through high school and generally through college, I had this idea that I was probably going to go into law. I pretty much put myself through college. I worked as a landscaper. I was a public school bus driver.
You're still doing landscaping, from
Yes,
what I
am.
understand.
I am. I landscape frequently. I'm fairly proficient with a chainsaw.
Good for you.
So if you need a tree downed, I can take care of that for you. I had folks saying you should be a lawyer. You're pretty good at arguing, and I liked doing things in high school. I was in drama club. I was in the audiovisual club. I was an audiovisual club nerd. Liked government type things, so law seemed to make sense.
Real quick, because I've heard you talk about drama club and theater and things like that. What was your favorite show, and what part did you have?
Okay, well, I was the king in The King and I in my high school.
Wow. It doesn't get any better than that.
Correct. Although Yul Brynner and singing is not exactly, you don't put those two things together, but that was a fun little musical to do. TV show, I watched, all the ones that were popular back then. There was a TV show called, on Saturday nights on NBC, they had Saturday Night Mystery, whatever it was. So you had McMillan and Wife, you had McCloud, you had Columbo. So watch those a lot.
I have no idea what you're talking
Correct.
about, but I'm hopeful somebody does.
Yeah, correct. No, these are the types of things that, form your character, and if you get off your phone, you'd learn those kind of things.
Okay, wow.
So, anyway, okay, fine. My favorite movie, if you got to know that, my favorite movie is The Blues Brothers. So that came out when I graduated high school.
I have seen that.
Thank you.
Yes,
it's one of the greatest movies ever. I go to college, get my degree. I go to law school here at TU. My wife's a veterinarian. Of course, we get married while we're in college or while I'm in law school, and she takes her first job in Hampton, Virginia. It was like 1,000 miles away, and so after my first year of law school, I get an internship at the DA's office, or what they call the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Hampton, Virginia, and that's when I really realized what criminal prosecution was about. You've heard me tell this story many times. The very first day, it's something that prosecutors like to do to assess whether somebody that is interning, whether
Yeah.
they'll take a bite to the deal. And so they handed me a murder file, as a matter of fact, and just said, take this home and read it. And so it was the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Chester Eugene Stark. And I remember at that moment, first time reading police reports, crime scene reports, seeing pictures of a dead body, and looking at Christine and saying, I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that was June of '87. And so from that point on, I have done nothing but focus on this job. When I was in law school, kind of the same stuff. I was on the trial practice team. I was on the moot court team. I did law review. I was active in student government. I was a student bar association president. Because I was paying my way as much as I could through law school. I was a resident assistant at a dormitory while I was there. I got through law school in 2.5 years because the tuition was even back then was pretty expensive, and I was going a lot on loans. So I was pedal to the metal. Then just got into this career of being a prosecutor. I started out up in Osage County as a child support enforcement attorney. As a prosecutor, and that covered 4 counties actually: Washington, Nowata, Osage, and Pawnee. I did a circuit route. I hit all 4 of those counties 2 times a month. I headed up that office. It was me and 4 ladies who were doing that enforcement work. You know, after my first year, we were the most improved child support enforcement office in the state, and then went to work for Nowata County. And really got into doing the criminal stuff. And then from that point, got to Bartlesville, was first assistant in Washington County, and then came down to work for Mr. Harris in 2002, and have been in Tulsa County since then.
Mm-hmm. So you're in your 37th year of prosecution, and you have frequently said that one of your greatest accomplishments is the court therapy dog program. Why? What is that, and why is it so meaningful to you?
Okay, so obviously I'm married, and so I count my family as one of the most important aspects of my life. I mean, I getting married to Christine was a miracle in and of itself. You've met her. I've got 3 great daughters, Sandra, Jenny, and Jackie. But if I were to count the 5 best things in my life, I would count number 5 as that court therapy dog program. And that origin was I used to do a lot of child abuse cases. That was the area that I specialized in as a prosecutor before I became the DA. And one of the hard parts about putting a child on in a child sexual abuse case is it's scary for those kids. I mean, they're having to go into a courtroom full of strangers and divulge things that are very private. And of course, they're talking about stepdad or dad or somebody like that. And there are all the pressures that go with that, whatever things that he may have said to prevent her from telling the story. Those kids got very emotional. They'd cry often on the stand. So when somebody introduced to me this idea, actually it was Susan Witt, who used to have your job. They were using therapy dogs in domestic violence shelters in another state. I think might have been Florida. And when she introduced this idea to me, I just looked at it. I was like, man, that may be the solution to child abuse. So I worked hard with a therapy dog handler named Leon Mullis, and he had this little Bichon Frise named Boo. Great little white dog, but those dogs they have to have an empathetic disposition. They are trained to not react to anything. We got them licensed, we got them insured, and then I convinced the judge, hey, let me try this. Let me just have this dog sit with this kid and see if it works. Mm-hmm. And it was a gift of God. There's no other way to describe it. What used to take me anywhere from an hour and 30 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes to get through all that testimony, now I was getting kids on and off the stand in 30 minutes. No trauma, no crying. They were telling the truth, and that's the point. Is just why don't we just let these kids tell the story without being scared? Mm-hmm. So if something happened in the courtroom that might be alarming to a child, they would look at the dog, is usually sitting on their lap or right at their feet, and they'd notice that the dog wasn't reacting. They're like, well, if it's not scaring Boo, why am I getting scared? Why should I be scared? So just a miracle of God to watch that unfold. So we got a law passed in Oklahoma. Now every child in Oklahoma has an absolute right to have a therapy dog with them if they want. And so we make that available through our office. We got a team of 4 or 5 dogs and their handlers that help these kids out. It's I could die today and be very happy having done just that and marrying my wife and having my 3 daughters.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Most people are pretty familiar with the show Law and Order. It gives some pretty good insight that you've even said is pretty accurate related to the relationship between a prosecutor and a member of law enforcement. But for everybody watching, what is that relationship really like, and why is it so important?
Yeah, I mean, so if anybody's ever watched Law and Order, I do think in a condensed version, you're taking a case that probably covered 2 or 3 days of investigation, and then you condense all that workup down into an hour show, and then you with commercials and stuff, it's maybe 42 or 43 minutes of actual content. But they do a very good job of actually capturing a legal issue in the law, some arrests that took place. They do a very good job of characterizing how law enforcement views the case and the efforts that they put in to try and capture these bad folks. And then I think they're very effective in then showing the relationship that prosecutors have to have with the courts and with the police. So in many respects, I've had many of the exact same conversations. The police are the ones that do the investigation. The prosecutors are the ones that are putting the case in front of a judge or jury to try and persuade them to follow through with what the police believe and the DA's office believes in. So, I've had conversations with police officers, and they'll come in and they have a viewpoint on a particular case, and I'm like, okay, I agree with you. This looks like something, but I need more evidence. And they're like, hey, we got all we got. And I'm like, no, there's got to be something else out there. So it's a give and take relationship. Sometimes it's really easy. You capture the crime on film and you can move quickly. Sometimes you don't have a body. And the pressure is, well, hey, we know this person's probably dead. And I'm like, well, but, if it's a murder, I'm going to have to actually prove that person's dead. So you guys are going to have to really show that the absence of that body, the only thing that it's consistent with is not they went to another state. It's consistent with they just dropped off the face of the earth. Their phone activity stopped. They had a regular job. Those kind of things that you see on TV. I've tried those kind of cases, and they're very accurate.
Well, one of those cases was the Raymond Johnson case, where he murdered his girlfriend and his girlfriend's baby. This was a case where you were there from start to finish, and you were there with the victim's family whenever Mr. Johnson was executed. Tell us why it was so important for you to be there with the victim's family, and what it was like to be a part of a case like that from beginning to end.
Yeah, so I was the chief of the criminal division back at the time. So Doug Drummond, who was the first assistant, he actually prosecuted that case along with Bill Mussman. Bill Mussman right now is a judge on the Court of Criminal Appeals. Doug Drummond is a district court judge here in Tulsa County. Julie Doss was another prosecutor on that case. She was an assistant district attorney. She's now a judge, which I almost feel like I've become a farm team for the judiciary. We got so many of our former prosecutors out there advancing in their careers, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
But I was the chief of the criminal division, so I got to see, we all divvy up cases in the DA's office. Sometimes my boss, the DA, would handle a murder case. There are times when me being the DA, I handle murder prosecutions. So I got to see that family. It was a very notorious case. You get to watch some of the proceedings in court. You would go to our victim remembrance ceremonies. You would see the family members showing up at those ceremonies. You can tell that they were just emotionally destroyed from what had happened. It was a vicious murder. She was a young mom with, I think, 4 children. Her baby being, I think, 7 months old or thereabouts. She was a sister. She was a daughter. He had beat her over the head with a claw hammer that didn't do it well enough. He doused her with gasoline, doused her baby with gasoline. It's just a vicious murder. Who had previously committed a homicide. So of all the people I've ever met, he fits into a perfect category of, all right, enough's enough. You need to get the death penalty. So the jury gave that, but it took upwards of 20 years to get to that point. By that point, Tim Harris had retired. I'm now the DA. And from a responsibility standpoint, we stand with victims from beginning to end. And so it's my duty, my obligation to stand with that victim's family, even at the time of execution. So I'd gone down to witness that and be a support to the victim's family. That's kind of what we do in the DA's office is whatever the difficulty is with the case, whether it's good or bad, we need to stand by our victims, and we do that on a daily basis. And it's sad for the family, but also proud to stand with that family to finally get them the justice they deserved.
Mm-hmm. The death penalty is such a arduous process. It takes a long time for that process to culminate. Why do you believe the death penalty is necessary for certain cases?
Well, Oklahoma law, any murder is it can be first degree murder, second degree murder, manslaughter, but first degree murder is the only murder that might have the opportunity to have the death penalty in consideration. But those have to fit within aggravating circumstances. Not every murder is a death penalty eligible case. So I think that's obviously it's the law of the state of Oklahoma. I believe in the death penalty. There are just certain people who are so bad, so evil that they present a ongoing threat to our community. And even when you put them in prison, these are the same type of people that will kill prison guards. They will kill fellow inmates. And so, you have to pick those cases. I don't freely file those things. I have a team of prosecutors, many of whom have opposing viewpoints. And we go through a pretty extensive discussion, and then ultimately, if I think it's a case that a judge or jury should make that determination, then I'll file that bill in particular. So it's not every case, but Raymond Johnson's a perfect example of somebody who definitely deserved the death penalty.
Mm-hmm. The mission of the office is to find truth and seek justice.
Right.
What exactly does that mean to you?
Well, I growing up as a Catholic, I really believe that, you live and you die and then you're going to have all of eternity. And so, if you believe in a higher authority, then everything you're doing on this planet is going to be measured on a subsequent scale. And so my focus is always on making sure I'm following God's design and His plan for me, and I want to be living eternity in the next best place. So inherent within that is absolute truth. I mean, our Creator created an absolute truth. We're designed to be in communion with Him. That's His goal for all of creation, is to be joined with Him. So I'm always focusing on making sure I'm doing whatever I can to, in my life, personally and professionally, is let's just focus on the truth. So in the criminal justice system, it's critical, right? You're talking about depriving somebody of their liberty. You better get it right, and so you want to approximate the truth, even if most people weren't there to actually witness a crime. And if the people who did witness it, sometimes they might have motives or bias or interests in the outcome that are different from the truth. So that process requires us to vet out what people say they saw, vet out what evidence we have to corroborate that. And then when we turn it over to a judge or jury, we're saying, hey, this is about as close as we're ever going to get to how this really went down. And then seeking justice is the second aspect of that. Once you get to the truth, there ought to be some type of consequence. And what I tell people is, you make choices every day, and those choices end up having consequences. Well, if you make a good choice, then the consequence ought to be good. If you make a bad choice, the consequence ought to be something less than desirable. And so we have to focus on, all right, what actually happened. You take into consideration the background of the person that's committing the crime, and then you try and mete out what would be appropriate justice. So somebody that's coming from a traumatic childhood who's out there stealing and probably doesn't understand that maybe that impacts other people, well, that you should try and educate them differently and hold them accountable, but not destroy them for the rest of their lives. Somebody that's out there molesting kids, I don't think there's a single person out there that would say, well, that's acceptable behavior. So that justice is going to be meted out in a much more severe fashion. But we try and look at every person individually, with a focus on what can we prove, and then paying attention to our victims and making sure that our voices are heard. Then we figure out, all right, what's the appropriate measure of justice. And each case is unique, and the facts are always going to be different. Some cases may be stronger than others, but at the end of the day, prosecutors are ministers of justice, and we're expected to be wearing the white hat in the courtroom and making sure the court and the jury are fully educated on the law and the facts.
Mm.
So,
This was your first podcast. How does it feel?
not too bad. I think it went okay. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't.
You forgot your
the
plug.
Sponsorship is the County Line Podcast.
We love the County Line Podcast.
Yes, we do, and I should have turned that.
I got my turned, so we talked about this.
Yeah.
Well,
it was kind of fun.
Thank you
Enjoyed
for
it.
doing it. Appreciate it. We'll be doing this monthly, not necessarily always with you, but probably mostly with you. I know that when I first came on about a year ago, we talked about how we need to do something to build this bridge between the world of the courthouse and the real world.
Correct.
Because people do not really know what the district attorney does, and this is a part of that. And so I'm grateful that that's been something that you've tasked me with, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
Yeah, a lot of people think I'm a really serious guy. I think you kind of know I'm
a stand-up comedian. He is a stand-up comedian.
I have
he
done
really
stand-up
is.
comedy a time or two.
That's right. And maybe, you know what? That's probably down the road. So we'll put a pin in that one. Maybe. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us on this first podcast, the DA Dashboard. This is something that we're going to be doing monthly as a part of our external newsletter, DA Dashboard. If you're not on that already, please go to our website and subscribe to that, and we will see you next time. Find truth and seek justice.